John from DominoWorldRecord.com here with another episode of This Day in Domino History. On May 9th, 1986, a very unique domino topple happened. Yet nothing exists about it on the internet today. That's because it was done for a private party and got absolutely no press coverage. Erez and I were fortunate enough to be part of that event. So, 39 years later, here's the story of how 6 topplers came together to do the first around-the-world domino topple. Back in 1985, there were only a handful of big-time domino topplers in the whole world. And in the fall of that year, Thom Harrington mailed letters to most of them to ask if they wanted to participate in a topple commissioned by a large multinational company. So you're probably wondering, who's Thom Harrington? Well, back in the mid-70s, Thom was the executive vice president of the National Hemophilia Foundation in New York City, and he actually has a very important place in domino history. Thom was the first to recognize the fundraising potential of this domino toppling thing started by Bob Specka in 1974. So he created the World Domino Spectacular and produced world record topples with Specka in 1978, Michael Kearney in 1979, and Erez and me in 1980, all while raising a ton of money for hemophilia research and awareness. Thanks to the massive press coverage Thom Harrington helped bring to those 3 events, domino toppling gained its first really big worldwide exposure, resulting in the incredible international growth it had over the years that followed. In the 80s, Thom kind of became the de facto agent for most topplers in the States. When inquiries came into his office for domino-related commercials or events, Thom would assign each project out to one of the various topplers with whom he had worked. However, when this request from the multinational company came across his desk in 1985, Thom knew he had to assemble an elite team. So, in October, he mailed that letter to 6 of the world's best topplers: Michael Kearney, Akira Enomoto, Scott Suko, Dan Beckerleg, me, and Erez. Once all 6 of us agreed to do the project and keep it a secret, Thom finally revealed that the multinational company was in fact Coca-Cola, and this topple would be part of Coke's corporate-wide 100th birthday celebration on May 9th, 1986. After weeks of initial planning done through phone calls and letters, the 6 of us traveled to New York City in January for 2 days of meetings with Thom and other Coke representatives. Now, this topple was going to take place on 6 different continents, so the first thing we had to decide was who would go where. I got Atlanta in North America, Scott got Rio de Janeiro in South America, Michael got London in Europe, Erez got Nairobi in Africa, Akira got Tokyo in Asia, and Dan got Sydney in Australia. Now, this wasn't going to be just 6 separate topples. What made this event so unique was that the topple actually was going to jump from city to city. The plan was to have the dominoes close a switch at the end of each topple, sending a signal via satellite to electronically push the first domino in the next city. The concept seemed easy enough when it was presented to us early on, but once we finally were all together in New York and saw this illustration of all the ground stations and all the orbiting satellites that would link our 6 setups into one continuous topple, we knew Coca-Cola was sparing no expense. This was state-of-the-art technology in pre-internet 1986, and reserving that satellite time wasn't going to be cheap. Oh, and Coke also spent a pretty penny on the dominoes themselves, custom making over 500,000 in 10 different colors. All were 6-1 dominoes, signifying 6 continents, 1 topple, with the Coke Centennial logo on the back. Having all of us in the same room made the meetings very productive. with most of the time spent brainstorming ideas for the Domino stunts and patterns that would be themed around Coca-Cola products. By the time we adjourned, all the major details were set. So finally, at the beginning of May, we all traveled to our designated cities and started setting up Dominoes, with a few exceptions. All the boxes of Dominoes shipped to Rio and Nairobi were held up at customs at each airport for more than a day. And the construction of the Domino site in the huge Atlanta Convention Center took longer than expected. So these delays put Scott, Erez, and me behind schedule before we even got started. On top of his customs delay, Erez had an added headache. Nairobi was getting unusually heavy rain, which caused large insects to try to seek shelter in the hall where he was setting up the Dominoes. Erez had to keep cans of bug spray handy to go after anything crawling or flying near the Dominoes. And despite his efforts, a giant moth like this managed to land within the Domino setup, knocking over several hundred Dominoes. Erez was living every toppler's nightmare, but he managed to get his setup completed on time. When May 9th finally arrived, parties for local Coke employees were being held at all 6 topple sites, with the largest being in Atlanta, home of Coke's corporate headquarters. Now, as I was trying to finish my setup by the 2 p.m. start time, I could hear the noise getting louder and louder in the large convention center as the crowd eventually grew to thousands of people. Then at 2:05 p.m., Coca-Cola president Brian Dyson started the Dominoes falling in Atlanta. After about 20 seconds, the Dominoes closed a switch on a little blue box to trigger Rio, and then continued toppling for about another 10 seconds, which covered the time that it could take for the satellite signal to reach its destination. This was done in each city, so Dominoes were always falling, and there wouldn't be any gaps between the topples. Now, I couldn't see any of the large screens on the convention center floor showing everything, but when Scott's Dominoes started toppling in Rio, the Atlanta crowd let out a loud roar, so I knew that first electronic trigger worked perfectly. Scott's Rio topple was smooth from start to finish, and then it closed the switch to make the jump to Michael's London setup. Here are a few video highlights from that portion of the topple.
And now here we are in London, taking over the signal from Rio column, and you will see Paddington Station, where the trains come and go to our beautiful West Country scenery. Out from Paddington Station, and we're coming to the Sea of Spinners. There they are, green and yellow and white, and there are little metal spinners that will actually send us out down the fan shape. Now, isn't that just stupendous? Ladies and gentlemen, the Sea of Spinners. We go now up, and we are climbing up this frame to what Mike Kearney calls not Coke around the world, but the world around Coke. And down she comes, and off go the Dominoes again. Wait. Just wait. And hold your breath. But the Dominoes still continue. And now we are on our way as we come towards the end of our time, and we are now sending the signal from Britain across the world to Africa, Nairobi, and Leonard Mambo.
Yes!
That third satellite trigger from London to Nairobi again worked just as planned. And when Erez's topple in Nairobi finished up and closed that fourth trigger switch, the domino chain moved into tomorrow when Akira's dominoes started falling in Tokyo, because there it was early morning on May 10th. After Tokyo, the Domino chain stayed in the future as it moved on to Dan's Sydney, Australia topple. While those dominoes were falling, the mood back in Atlanta, I could tell, was absolutely electric. Everyone was waiting for the chain to get back to Atlanta. And when that last switch closed in Sydney, everyone, including me, held their breath. When that little blue box started the dominoes falling again in Atlanta, bringing the chain back from the future to May 9th once again, I was pumping my fist in the air. The Atlanta crowd was absolutely erupting in loud cheers. Nobody could believe it made it around the world. Eventually, the chain in Atlanta snaked its way to the finale, which was a huge 7-foot-tall birthday cake. And when the dominoes closed a switch in that cake, all the candles on the cake lit up and started flashing, sirens went off, and then confetti shot out of the top of the cake. And the crowd went wild one last time. What a birthday party that was. In the end, the 6 of us toppled 373,031 dominoes that traveled 35,901 curved Earth miles by way of 356,872 satellite transmission miles, all toppling in 31 minutes and 42 seconds. The 6 of us were completely exhausted after this topple, but we were thrilled to have been part of such a one-of-a-kind domino event. Oh, and a couple of years later, there was a little added bonus. Though this Coke event was not a world record, our around-the-globe domino topple was so unique, it did earn a mention in the 1989 Guinness Book of World Records. Though that entry didn't list any names, Michael Kearney, Akira Enomoto, Scott Suko, Dan Beckerleg, Erez Klein, and myself, John Wickham, under the guidance of Thom Harrington, all can be proud of our efforts that helped make that topple such a success. We'll catch you again on the next This Day in Domino History. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and check out DominoWorldRecord.com for the latest news on our plans to attempt another world record in the coming years. If you're an experienced builder and want to work with some of the best domino artists on the planet, we'd love for you to join the Domino Dream Team. Our team needs 100 more topplers to show sponsors our community is ready to go after a world record of at least 5 million dominoes. So sign up today.
And hold your breath.